Hello, welcome to this Digital Cities lunchtime panel session in partnership with Hello Culture. I hope you've all got some great food to be eating alongside our chat today. My name's Jo Verrent. I'm senior producer at Unlimited, which is a commissions programme for disabled artists. I'm delighted to be chairing today's event. It gives me an opportunity to talk to some of the artists that we've commissioned over the years and dig a bit deeper. I'm a white 50-something plus woman tending towards the plump and currently got dyed pink hair. So for the last few months, Hello Culture, as part of Digital Cities, has been exploring how artists have been working under these extraordinary times that we find ourselves in, and the explosion in the use of digital technology to both reach and engage with audiences, obviously including disabled audiences. Now, this month marks the 25th anniversary of the Disability Discrimination Act, which has now obviously been wrapped into the Equalities Act. And we wanted to have a moment where we explored the unique experience of disabled, deaf or neurodivergent artists in this space, and how those artists have been using technology and digital to redefine their practice, develop access and push the boundaries around access and also audience. So we're going to touch on the way that the disabled experience has also been often misused, let's say, by elements of technology and digital too. So I've been fascinated by this area for ages, and how disabled artists are innovating in this field of disability, digital and disruption. So we've got three guests today: artist Jane Gauntlett and her support worker today, Amy; Jonny Cotson, who's an access consultant and performance artist; and Tarik Elmoutawakil, who's co-artistic director at Marlborough Productions. So, a few bits of information before we kick off. We've got closed captions today, so you can see those on the CC button at the bottom of the screen. There's an option there to view the full transcript if you don't want them scrolling along the bottom of your screen, which is how I like them. We'll be recording the session, so you'll be able to watch it again. There's also a link, if you want it, please ask for it, for you to watch the captions in a separate browser window. So we're with you for an hour, and we'll be hearing from our panel for about the first 40 minutes or so. And in those last 20 minutes, we really want to answer your questions. So we absolutely want you to shove your questions in the chat, and we'll get through as many as we can at the end. So I think that's all the introductions over. So I'm going to introduce our first artist, who is the amazing Jonny Cotson. So Jonny, do you want to join me on screen?
Thank you. I am a white male, 40 plus something, wearing glasses and a yellow jumper. I'm delighted to be here. I describe myself as a profoundly deaf man who speaks. I'm Cardiff-based artist and a leader for the Welsh deaf community. I'm passionate about creating opportunities for deaf artists and socially disadvantaged and marginalised people. I shifted from my professional teaching career to performing and art inclusion, consultancy and training. Besides performing at the Edinburgh Fringe last year and other cultural events in the UK and Europe, I'm involved with a lot of multiple local and national initiatives designed to support inclusion and quality of opportunity in the art sector. Would it be possible if you'd like to play my film, please?
And we'll turn off our videos to let you watch that without disruption from us.
My name is Jonny. I was born deaf. Being raised in a hearing world, I had to learn deliberately. I'm performing in a one-man show that explored my struggle of being a deaf man living in a hearing world. For a hearing audience, it's an eye-opening experience. For a deaf audience, a familiar tale of isolation.
So you just saw a snippet of the video. Why do you think I did it? So what is loud is not always clearer. So in short, it is basically an autobiographical journey of a deaf man trapped in this chaotic hearing world. It's a guy who wants to be accepted, yet he feels disconnected, and so it really is a lived experience. Really is when I created Louder, for me it's about trying to find acceptance, and I use that to connect with an audience. And I work as a creative consultant, so I call this show, it's like a creative consultant on stage, because I'm not only teaching them, I want the audience to come on my journey, to feel that it's not sympathy, and feel empathetic toward the performance. And you are a part of me, and that's what it is. It feels...
As someone who's hearing impaired and who saw the show, as you know, I actually have the poster from the show just above my bed saying "Deaf, not stupid." It had such a profound impact on all the audiences who watched it, a real sense of connection with your experiences. Go on.
And I think what I like about the show, it feels quite authentic, because I'm not a trained actor. In fact, in school, they told me, don't sing, don't dance, and don't act. Don't do any of those things. I've done 60 shows now. I sing, I dance, and I perform. And what's great about it, you'll see the vulnerability inside me. I am vulnerable. I'm always vulnerable, yet I'm also very confident. So, and the best thing about the show for me is finding acceptance. Because I always believe I'm the only deaf person who speaks. I'm the only one out of this crazy world. But yet I find deaf people in the audience, deaf people saying, you know what, you're one of us. You're in our world. And that's what I want. And it's good for me in terms of my mental health and wanting to be able to connect with people.
So you then got some unlimited funding to do some research and development on a second piece focusing on your deafness, which was called Hearing Aids. So what was that about?
Well, the reason why I created it, what I realised, I wanted more from the audience. They got it from Louder, but I want to go into a deeper connection. So I decided to come up with the idea of creating a hearing aid for hearing people. And it's basically to get them to sort of be immersed into the deaf world. And it really is, it's not about the deaf experience, it's about learning how we communicate, how could society be equal in accepting, can we learn from each other. I did a great R&D. It was a journey that I wanted to find out more about myself, and basically at the end of this R&D, I was looking to go forward with it. Then COVID happened, fucking COVID, and it basically stopped everything what I wanted to do. Because, and the reason for this, I'm always trying to find a safe space, and the safe space is really important for me. While I'm finding safe space as a physical space, I was trying to understand what is a safe space for the digital space. While everything was being captioned or everything was used in digital platform, I went the other way. I decided to stop because it wasn't for me, because it wasn't working for me.
Yeah, I think that sense of liveness within your work is so important. But we'll talk more about that a bit later on. I just want to say my favourite bit of hearing aids was the fact that it's not about the volume. It's not about it's about focus, and it's about attention. And so many people don't get that about the deaf experience. We don't need you to shout at us. We need you to give us your attention. And I thought you captured that beautifully. I can't wait to see that develop. But I'm going to hold you there. I'm going to say goodbye to Jonny just for a moment. I'm going to bring on our second artist. So bye for now, Jonny, and hello, Jane. So Jane, is a solo artist who's based in residence at the Pervasive Media Studio in Watershed in Bristol. And I have to say, so is Jonny. We've got great friends down in Watershed. And you're a writer, director, curator, and you've made work in theatre, interactive theatre, audio, game, virtual reality, and mixed reality. A massive list of areas of working in. So tell us about one of the first pieces that you got engaged with.
So I am a white woman and I'm looking forward to turning 14 next year. I like dressing up and I'm wearing a white ruffled collar and oversized rings. Sorry, back to the question, Joe. You asked about the work that I've been doing. So I got into technology in 2007. I began using audio and audiovisual technology. It was in response to a traumatic brain injury that I had, which put me in a coma. I quickly learnt how to talk, but it took me far longer to learn how to communicate. I began to use audio and audiovisual technology as an alternative method of communication. I began to make pre-recorded conversations, appointments, and arguments. I found using audio an effective way to communicate with both my loved ones and my medical teams. I began to collaborate with other people to do the same, to share their experiences from a first-person perspective. This became a project called the In My Shoes project. The concept behind this was to start with a story, then to choose the best platform on which to tell it. I have collaborated with over 100 people to share their experiences using audio, interactive audio, and 360 film. The picture which I am sharing with you is of a piece called In My Shoes Intimacy. It explores different experiences that people have of intimacy. There are two people seated next to each other. They are facing each other. It looks like they are wearing large oblong boxes over their eyes. These are virtual reality headsets. They are both watching a series of vignettes which show encounters between two different people from two different perspectives.
So pop back on screen, Jane, for a moment. I'd love to just ask you about In My Shoes and the sense that it was designed to emphasize empathy and give people a different viewpoint, because that's been a really popular conceit that's been used within the whole digital realm, and I thought you did it beautifully within In My Shoes. But I also know there's some questions around that approach, so just tell me a little bit more about that before we talk about your next work.
Yeah, the In My Shoes project was quite a journey for me, really. I didn't use the word empathy until I started making work with headsets. And then suddenly the trend of virtual reality and empathy took off. And I kept finding myself on panels talking about empathy, but questioning sort of whether it's a dangerous thing for people to think that they're empathizing with someone else. You know, and actually if I'm telling someone that I'm going to help them to empathize with other people, then I'm obviously not doing, you know, it's show a piece of work and then see what happens. I learned a lot, and I began to feel really uncomfortable about calling the project In My Shoes, because we can't put people in other people's shoes. You know, we wear our shoes for a really long time and we wear them in, and we get used to them, they fit us really well, but they break. So kind of that was how I started to think about it. So In My Shoes and empathy became words that I found really hard to use.
So we'll definitely come back and pick up on that a bit later on, but I want to talk about your next piece just very briefly. And I know that the whole of lockdown and the fact that we, like Jonny says, we have access to everything, but that's not necessarily the direction that most people went. You went in quite a counterintuitive direction based on that openness. Tell us a bit more about why, and also the work that you then create, or in the middle of creating.
So I guess I start with a story and then choose the best platform on which to tell it. So that's what happened with In My Shoes. And one of the biggest lessons I learned was to put content first. It's the most important thing. It's what people remember. Sort of, I feel like I
think we've lost your audio.
Am I back?
You're back, yep. I'll
Great.
turn my video off so people can really look at the image. Where
did I get to? I start with a platform and a story, then choose the best platform on which to tell it. So that's what I've been doing with the In My Shoes project. And I think one of the biggest lessons I learned was that people don't necessarily remember the technology. I don't really want them to, but they will remember the technology, the story, and the overall experience. So I started to put my focus very much onto that, not using technology for the sake of it. In response to the pandemic, I've switched from making non-fiction pieces to fictional pieces, which focus on safe spaces, freedom and escapism. I've been rethinking which platforms to use. My new project, It's Our Pleasure, uses 3 different platforms: The Post, an online platform, and a series of telephone calls. It's in the initial stages of research and development. I've had the pleasure of asking people questions about what they like to watch, what they like to listen to, what they like to touch, and what they like to put in their mouths. It is not just about fantasies and fetishes, it is about our everyday pleasures. The pandemic has inspired me to pay more attention to what I might previously have referred to as the little things. Perhaps they aren't so little. In the picture that I'm sharing with you, it outlines the concept of the It's Our Pleasure project. In this picture, you are looking through a peephole. You can see a path running through an avenue of trees with a city landscape in the background. A domed cathedral dominates the city landscape. There is a family of rubber ducks moving across a path. There is a glitter ball dangling from the highest trees, playing cards falling from the sky. At the end of the avenue, there appears to be a party afoot, a party that belongs in the 1920s. Close to the front are a pair of high rainbow stilettos peeping out of a bath of bubbles. The bubbles are floating through the air past a rather large hummingbird. The rear end of a zebra is peeping from a hedge, and a fish is floating above it. So that's just a sort of peek into what we are currently working on. We're kind of reclaiming the word pleasure because people's responses to the word pleasure it's been exciting, it's been interesting. I've learned a lot about my friends and strangers, but just really thinking about the little pleasures.
Fantastic. So we've got so much more to say, but I'm going to introduce Tarik, our last artist. So bye for now, Jane. Come back to you later. And hello, Tarik. So you again, massive list of credentials: artist, programmer, creative producer, founder, co-artistic director at Marlborough Productions in Brighton, who are the UK's only performing arts organisation dedicated to the intersectional queers. Am I right?
That is a fairly good description. I mean, it's the one that I have written down for myself. And previously, I never really liked job titles or anything that really kind of decided what I was. I think mainly I'm a chancer. I just try things out, and then if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I learn something.
Yeah, and quite a lot of them have been working quite well.
Yeah, it seems that they do, and I'm grateful for the people that I collaborate with. I think to make those things work. They're all things that I haven't done on my own. So I'm very grateful for the supportive team that I have built over the years. I should do a quick description of myself, shouldn't I? So I am a man with a little moustache. I have light brown skin, a cheeky smile, a sometimes serious look in my eyes, and what else you need to know? Oh yes, kind of a purple hoodie with sort of tie-dye design on it.
Excellent. And tell us about, so one of the works that Unlimited funded you to create was Brownton Abbey. So I think we're going to see a little trailer of that, and then you're going to tell us a bit more about it.
Yes, please. Get ready to dance.
We're going to come back on while that's fading off beautifully. So just tell us in a couple of lines what Brownton's all about.
So, Brownton Abbey is an Afrofuturistic, space church-themed performance party that celebrates, centres and elevates disabled queer people of colour.
Right. Nobody could possibly have any questions about that.
No,
Absolutely clear.
that's what it says on the tin.
And you were just about to embark on a major tour to a number of venues with both a large scale version and a small scale version of Brownton, obviously when COVID hit. So again, just tell us kind of quickly what happened, what the process was when everything got cancelled.
Well, what I think was interesting to me was that what made it not too difficult to reimagine a new life for Brownton Abbey post the pandemic was that the way that I'd envisioned it as a project was as a spaceship or a UFO that travels around the country or the globe, picking up disabled queer people as we go and allowing us to travel safely together. And so it kind of embedded into it with this idea of it being a technology in itself, the project. Technology doesn't have to be things made out of metal and wires. The technology is embedded into the idea. And so having to change what Brownton Abbey could be seemed to make sense. It's a spaceship. We can just transform what it is like a transformer and become something new that still held the principles of what Brownton Abbey seeks to do, which is to centre disabled queer people of colour, people who are marginalised in a number of ways and who rarely get to kind of be whatever we are. You know, there isn't enough representation of us out there, and so we often, I guess, are pigeonholed if we are seen at all. And so with Brownton Abbey, there's an opportunity to be alien gods. That's what I wanted to see, is like where maybe we're treated as different, but what if difference is centered? What if difference is celebrated and not to levels of a godlike status? So as it was it's a very fun thing to embody and really empowering. And so what we did for how we changed it for the pandemic was to create an online version. But one of the things that was central to me, because it came up during the increased attention to the lives of Black people during the protests, during the Black Lives Matter protests in the pandemic phase 1, was that there was suddenly a lot of attention on Black and brown people, and a lot of people who really wanted to be supportive, but also that felt like a lot of pressure. I was getting a lot of invites to speak here and to talk there, and as much as I like that, I also recognized that it just felt like a lot of pressure. And I wanted to make sure that this project, if we were going to do it online, that I centered the audience and the community that it always had done, which is queer, Black and brown, disabled folks, which meant that I wanted to create an online version, a live version of Brownton Abbey, that was only accessible, the live part of it, to other Black and brown people. It meant that white people weren't allowed. I was exclusive about it.
And what was amazing about that from a funding point of view, it meant we were funding something we couldn't go to, of a huge number of the people connected to Unlimited couldn't go to. Obviously, we do have some Black and brown disabled people connected with Unlimited who also identify as LGBTQIA+. So, but by the time we're getting to that, it was really interesting to not be able to go to something and actually to experience just a fraction of that marginalisation.
Yeah, it's something that I've always felt is with my exclusion of some elements of Brownton Abbey. For example, when we do the version in live space, it's Black and brown people only on the stage, but everyone is of course welcome in the audience. And I always think that with the elements of exclusion that are integral to the project, radical exclusion, that's to get to the root of it, is what radical means. That there's always lessons in there. It's always deliberate, and there's things to learn and to experience from that moment of exclusion. And of course, the project that we did make, it has been filmed, it's been recorded, it will be released for everybody to see. But the work is a healing space, and I wanted to make sure that our moment of healing wasn't a spectator sport for people. You know, and that I think particularly because with online practices, it means that anyone can find their way. Sometimes, you know, if an event is put online, you can really have a lot of problems with people Zoom bombing or whatever into spaces, or just writing in comments awful things. And I needed to that not be a thing that we were experiencing. And I wanted to make sure that the artists that were involved in the creation of this project also were able to just be creative without feeling that they might be under attack for expressing themselves.
So I'm just going to hold you there. I'm going to invite the others back on. I'm going to also say to you, our lovely audience, please put your questions in the chat. I'm going to ask a couple of questions and then we'll come to some of your questions. But I think it's really interesting to me that all three of you mentioned the word safety, and all three of you mentioned not going for the maximum exposure number of audiences, but actually turning the work in a different direction due to COVID, and looking instead at ways of exclusivity, of making smaller, intimate moments. And I think that's really, really fascinating. So yeah, I've got a load of other questions, but I just wanted to know if anybody wanted to just come back on that, about why it was so important. Why is safety so important for disabled artists, maybe in these spaces? Jonny?
It's really interesting for me because, like I said earlier, why state debate is so important. I campaigned for this for so long before COVID, and then all of a sudden you got this influx of people using digital platforms, and it just became too overwhelming for me, because what I realized, I can't just turn up into a space and then I do something. So you have to have an understanding what it means for the participant to be in that space. So I spent quite a long time trying to work out what is a safe space, and I realized for me, a safe space for me is trust. So you build those trust, you build the trust within the space, within the room, and then that's where I'll be able to get the best work. That's where I believe we will get the best work. So that's what I've been doing. I've been saying no to a lot of work, and yes, to those who are disability and deaf aware, and then we learn to build relationships, and that's how I've been doing the last 9 months.
Any other thoughts on safety? Jane?
I think something I've really noticed about there being more online performances, that I feel more alienated in a way. I don't feel very comfortable there. I don't know if I'm going to be seen or not seen. So I think just really want to explore how I can create, and there are so many places where we feel safe that are closing down. And I think I want to explore how we can do that online.
I was at something, I said, I'm going to lie down because of pain and fatigue. And they went, oh, but does that mean you won't be paying attention? And if I know, and it was just kind of like, no, it means I will be lying down and paying attention. If I were not in your space, then that would be not paying attention. But equally, I may have to do that even if I wanted to be there. So yeah, really interesting thing. So I'm going to go back to the central theme that we set for this, which is about we are not your metaphor. I'm sure you've all got examples of where disability has been used as a metaphor within different arts projects or within different things. The work that you're making is authentically based in your own identities and lived experience. But I wonder whether anybody kind of wants to talk about the danger of when that gets taken out of disabled people's hands, or queer, black and brown folks' hands, or whatever, and becomes instrumentalized in some ways. In some ways, Tarik, you were mentioning it when we were talking about that, those increased invitations simply because of your skin color that kind of started to hit. Anyone want to start us off on that? Tarik?
I'll go for that. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a thing of recognizing feeling tokenized at points, or not being sure if you're being tokenized. You know, that in itself can be quite an isolating experience if you're not sure you're in a room because of your qualifications or your skills or whatever it is that you're bringing, or because people have noticed a few things about you that that are actually kind of arbitrary in many ways. And I guess it also leads back to the idea of safety as well, about being able to control the narrative that is so often taken out of your hands. You know, we're not the people who are the directors of major TV channels or film networks or whatever. So our stories are often not told by us, and so there's something about being able to do that ourselves and make sure that that they are, I guess, kept intact, that they're integral, and that they're there to serve the people whose stories they are, rather than to make other people feel better about themselves, which is often the case, I think, with disabled people, or any marginalized person. It's a kind of, oh, poor you. Well, I feel better about myself now that I know about your terrible, terrible experience, which actually goes back to Brownson Abbey, in that it's a flipping of narratives and being empowerment and saying that difference is, as you say, difference is delicious.
Yeah, we've just had a question actually come through, which is like, how do you make the decision which of those things, which of those invitations to take and which not to take? Which I think is a really interesting one, because there's one internal narrative, which is if I take the bigger high profile ones, I'll reach more people. But then there's also, where will I be represented best? Where will I, where's the fit right? And where do I feel safe? I wonder if anybody wants to answer that audience question about how you make those decisions.
Do a bit of research, I think, on the organisation. Just jumping in there, if that's okay. I think that research on the organisation. I've really felt supported by by Unlimited, for example, knowing that I could do something that a lot of people wouldn't be able to see the first time when they did redid Brandon Abbey for an online moment, trusting that they would trust me as an artist, that I was doing the work. So I think there's something about being able to trust. You can ask questions. You know, I'm quite specific now when someone asks me something to be on a panel or this or that, and I'm not sure why they've asked me, or they haven't made it clear. I'll ask them, why do you want me specifically? What is it about me that you like, or what is it that you want me to speak on?
Jane, you do a lot of panel sessions. Again, has your approach changed over time to the ones you say yes to and the ones that you don't? Or has that remained the same?
It has changed a lot. I do far less. I think I'm sort of rethinking my work and how I go about it. I think I've learned how to respond to questions. I think I've been asked some terrible things. I've been introduced in some terrible ways. I think I tend to send notes beforehand to say, you know, kind of, this is who I am. Please don't introduce me as Jane Gauntlett, epilepsy sufferer. Please don't ask me to talk about the negative impact that epilepsy has on my life. You know, kind of the things that I get asked. So I'm doing far less and just sort of rethinking where I am.
I think I was one, it wasn't you, but it was somebody else I was on a panel with, and somebody went, you were in a coma. How was that for you? To which the person kind of went, I have no idea, because at that point I had no sensory recollection. And it was just like we've got another question, which is about how can we make a space safe, particularly for disabled artists. And I think not asking questions like that is a really key way of making a safe space. I mean, Jonny, you've spoken a lot about safe space, and you've mentioned it in relation to trust. How long does it take to build up that trust? Is it about time? Is it about care? What's it about?
Yeah, good question. Like I said earlier, usually I get asked to come in to consult something, and it'll be one session. But very recently, I'm now being asked to become like a dramaturgy almost. So I'm almost involved in the whole project. So recently, I've just done a project with Dirty Protest, which is a theatre company in Wales, and I was with them for 9 months. So I was involved in the whole protest, coming from the very, very start of their landing, and we just did our final chairing about 2 weeks ago. And throughout that time, it's about really talking and being getting away from that fear of being able to talk about these things. And the more you talk about it, and the more you guided, you think that, okay, this is where it feels good. And people I work with really have a greater understanding about actually that shouldn't be an add-on. It should be very much parallel with everything, and it's beautiful and it's unique, and it's what art is all about. And it's about really ingraining that information into them.
So with this, why is disability such a compelling metaphor for so many projects, particularly digital projects? It just seems that whether it's do this and find out what it's like to be deaf, put this on and you will be able to experience what it's like, you know, to lose your arms or whatever. There just seems to be something compelling about this, because we keep seeing it come up again and again within, you know, some not great projects. Jane?
In the art world, in the VR world, there are sort of trends for buzzwords like innovative, immersive, empathy, and they just seem to fit really well with maybe raising funding or promoting something. It fits really well into sort of marketing. And I think one of the biggest things that I noticed was that a lot of people want to make work about disability, but not very many people want to employ, or people don't treat people very well. And the way that they reference work is, oh, I'm making this work with these poor people. You know, kind of sort of, that's my experience of that.
Yeah, that kind of pity narrative being something, because we also see it in literature, we also see it within our mainstream, you know, TV and media. It's films, love, you know, a pity. We have a little bingo card at home when we go and see anything disability related. You know, does somebody want to die at some point because they're a disabled person? You know, is sex off the cards because they're a disabled person? There's also a lot of deaf young men appear to take cars without owner's consent. Comes up a lot in narratives. You know, we start to spot the tropes, and it's usually because they haven't involved deaf and disabled people within the creation of that work. Okay, we've got a lot of audience questions coming in now. Great one here about the push for intimacy within your work, and if that's a move away from the kind of obsession with spectacle that can exist within the arts work. So anybody want to respond to that? Are we moving away from spectacle when we're looking at intimacy? Go on, Tarik, give me an answer.
Oh, I'm sure I've got one, but do you know what? I was having a moment of like ADHD, reading a question that I saw in a Q&A box. So can you ask it again, please? Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. Does the movement towards intimacy, or that limiting of audience, is that a move away from spectacle?
I mean, I think spectacle still is still a part. It can still be a part of it, but maybe it's more centering who controls the spectacle. You know, who has the ability, who has the power to shape that narrative. So I don't mind things. I mean, I guess there's something we talk about spectacle that's about being an observer. But if the people who are leading that narrative, who are being observed, have control over what they're being observed, you know, they're not people in a zoo, but they're showing themselves in the light that they want to be. I think then that is a movement away from spectacle in a kind of sort of power hierarchy sort of way, where people with more institutional power or social power are observing. In fact, what I quite like is when, you know, often marginalized people know more about the people who are from the mainstream than they know about themselves. So I quite like it when the narratives is flipped and people who are marginalized can tell, you know, when women know a lot about men that men have got no idea about, for example, you know, and I know trans people have got a lot more knowledge about what it means to be cisgender than so I enjoy when they're flipped and the spectacle becomes the mainstream.
Yeah, so there's something there about, it's about how we define spectacle. It's not about a paring back of experience. It's not about a limitation in relation to the quality or the aesthetic or any of those things, but it's about the gaze. So sometimes it's about limiting the gaze so that we have greater control over who is seeing and not seeing the work. And then maybe we can control the message slightly more because we've been on the receiving end of that in a really negative sense when we haven't controlled that message or haven't had any input into that message. That's when we tend to get more offensive kind of portrayals. Can that work with a smaller audience have more impact because it's smaller? That's another question that's come up. If we have the carefully considered audience, can we then achieve more impact even though we're not playing the numbers game? So I'm going to ask that to Jane, because I know your work is, you've done a lot on one-on-one work, not just one to an audience work. And presumably that's all about the impact you can have on one individual rather than on a larger group of people?
I think being able to make work which has a maximum of 1 to 2 participants means I can, myself and my facilitators and performers can put a lot more care into the participants' experience. I think that especially if you're using headsets, one of the biggest things is that people feel like they're being a spectacle because they can't see the world outside. So if they're wearing a headset, there's that kind of, people often sit, they're not very relaxed. So it's about caring for people in that situation so they feel safe. I think it's back to safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting question here from somebody in the audience who wants to ask about your earlier experiences, because we're all coming off here very confident and very open about impairments and access. Was it like that at the beginning? Was it was owning your disabled identity and getting work that met your access requirements? Was that easy at the beginning, or has that been a journey? So people are shaking their heads here, so I'm assuming it's a no. So Jonny, how long did it take you to accept that you were a deaf man?
I met my first, I'm 46 now, I met my first deaf person when I was 32. So it's very, very late in life. And so I really have been on this journey quite rapidly in the last 15 years. Prior to that, I felt that I would had a happy childhood. But of course, I didn't know any of these things were happening around me. I wasn't aware of, I thought that was normal. But I kind of, when I went and embraced my deaf identity, I realized how many barriers there are. And I'll never forget somebody said to me, Jonny, you're not happy. You don't understand what's going on. Now, this is a deaf person telling me, you do not understand what's going on. You're just nodding your head. You're just being the joker. You're just being fun, but you're not actually understanding what's going on. Of course, that's what prompted me to develop and create the show. And for me, it's about wanting to reach out to other deaf people. I knew that making the show, I would have deaf people in the audience, and because really, it's not just my story, it is our story, and it's our struggles, and sometimes when I do meet deaf people in the audience, it's a little bit of that trauma, a little bit of that isolation slowly goes, because it's just about me wanting to connect with them.
And Jane, that transition into a disabled person for you was quite a sudden one, because it's an acquired impairment. Again, did the adaptation into accepting your access needs, was that a simple thing, or was that quite complicated?
I was 25 when I had the brain injury, and I didn't call myself an artist. I remember somebody a few years later saying, oh, and Jane introducing me as an artist and being really surprised. I think that I've been very lucky to get involved with Unlimited and the Watershed and Southwest Creative Technology Network. They've been spaces I've felt like I have a voice and I feel comfortable. I have a new team, and we've been mostly working with those organizations. And then when we've worked with new organizations, they've been quite surprised. I think we're so spoiled by that. I think there's been a bit of surprise how differently we're treated, spoken to, how differently things are referred to, and what's available.
And Tarik, that you have so many identities to choose from. I just wonder whether, which ones came first and which ones linked more easily, more quickly. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So when I moved to Brighton when I was 20 for university, and I joined the LGBT society and started to chair it, and became, I was definitely connecting with my gay or queer self, and the rest of the other parts of my identities that were marginalized, I didn't really give much attention to. I kind of maybe felt like I was already taking up space. I should be grateful for any space that I have. And it wasn't until I had a breakdown maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, that I was realizing just how isolated I felt, how lonely I was. I didn't really know that I had that that I had a disability. I had hearing aids. I was wearing hearing aids from the age of 27 after some people that I lived with were like, I think you've got hearing loss. But I still didn't, I didn't think of myself as disabled. Um, it was only when I got them rechecked again at some point, I was asked if I was on a disabled register, and I was like, oh, I think I remember being asked this before and refusing it because I wasn't sure what the benefits to me would be if I was on a register. But it turns out I get a free bus pass, so that was already that was already a start. I was like, okay, there's. I mean, also, so yeah, that then led me to just think of myself in a much more broader perspective. So my queerness came first. I think um, blackness came later as well. I also didn't recognize that was something that I also could claim in myself as being an African person, a mixed African person. Um, it took me a while to claim space within the gay community or the queer community. And it was really, I think, on discovering, it was the first of all, I kind of created the idea of Brownton and then recognized that actually it was something that was first, I think, really to be in a kind of like queer black and brown sense. And at that same time, I was having my own realization that I was also had disabilities, and knowing that I could center all of that in and more in whatever way I liked, not just for me and for others as well, felt incredibly powerful, and was, I think, the beginning of me not feeling so isolated all the time, knowing that I actually could bring my full self to a situation, which I think in the past I'd only brought little parts of myself with me, just fractions of myself.
Yeah, and that means that you can, if everybody can bring their full self, then the work gets richer, and the nuances get deeper. And there's a question here which is really interesting about transformative justice as well, and how those things can be deep within work and not just surface within work. And I think all of your work has that balancing, that rebalancing, that readjustment in it. How does that become such an essential part of the work? I mean, is it just ownership? Is it just is it just who you employ on those projects? Anyone got any thoughts on that? How do we keep it not just surface?
I think there was something a good question about a good statement about who you employ as well. It was really brilliant for me to actually, what Brownton Abbey did, for example, was meant that I was spending a lot more time with other queer, black and brown disabled people. So my experience was reflected, it was broadened, and it felt that the work that was happening wasn't just about a performance. It was actually changing individuals' lives on many levels. Anybody who got to engage with it, as well as the audience, and it's transformed how people how many people who've been involved in the project, how we've been able to perceive ourselves and what opportunities we realize that we are able to take
So
or create.
We're getting closer to the end now. I've got one more question from the audience before I ask you for a summary kind of take home. So what the final question I'm choosing is, how do you go from media to media? So say from the live Brownton to the transmission version, or from one platform to another, and stay authentic within the work? Do any of the different platforms change that sense of authenticity? So I'm going to ask Jonny first, because you've resisted the move to online. Is that because you think you will lose the authenticity of the work?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had load of requests to put the show online. The problem is that you lose some of that authenticity in it. Because I'm very much connected with an audience, and if I can't connect with the screen, then there's no way it's gonna work. So I've resisted on that, and so I've just been looking at different avenues to way what I think can make work. So unfortunately for me, I don't agree with putting my show online. So yeah, because of the lived experience and the lived experience for the audience as well.
And Jane, you work across many different platforms. When you move from platform to platform, how does that impact on the work?
But also the piece has an impact on the work. It's about, I try to forget everything that I learned, that I know about the last platform, and try to think of different ways to do things. I think a mistake that I've made before is trying to transfer a concept, going from audio to 360 film was such a change. So it's just about forgetting what have you done with one platform and trying again in a completely different way.
And Tarik, what's been the biggest difference between Brownton Live and Brownton Transmission?
The biggest difference, there was something about not having, a room full of people to dance with, to play with. We did still have community members that were part of the team who were able. We had a very small number of people that were able to be in the space and stay within COVID restrictions. But actually, I think in many ways I haven't felt a huge difference in that. I think we've stayed integral to what it's meant to be about, what it's for, and who it serves. So it still felt empowering to the people who connected with it. So yeah, the biggest difference, I guess, was that there was no white people in the room when we did it this time, which also I did notice changed how I was able to speak about things. I don't like to upset anybody, offend people. I know that there's people, we all have vulnerabilities, and sometimes I push past that thing and will say, you know what, it's all right for you to have the feelings that you might experience by what I might say. So it was interesting being able to be in a room and say, to speak in a way that I wasn't holding back on myself to not offend some people who might have been in the audience, and instead what that allowed me to actually say and to speak my truth, which previously I'd been silencing in some way, even though I thought I hadn't been.
And I know quite often people make stuff online shorter, but am I right that the first transmission was 6 hours long?
It was 6 hours long, yeah, which is longer than the normal Brownton Abbey.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to have time to really sort of lose myself, I think, and for all of us sort of lose ourselves in the rhythm, and also I wasn't sure how many times we're going to be able to do it, so there was a thing of like, let's really go to town on this, and it was an experiment, so there was something about really giving ourselves time to really try play with the different software and the different things to see what would happen, so that we can really nail it the next time we do it. I think we nailed it anyway.
We're heading into our last 3 minutes, so I'm going to ask you all, what do you want our audience out there, the people who are listening in today and watching in today, if they could take away one thing around disabled artists working in digital spaces around this, what's the one thing you would want them to take away? So Jonny first.
I'll just say it again. I think the most important thing to take away from it is the safe space, and finding that safe space, and finding out what the asset rider is, and what is important for a disabled artist working with you.
Excellent. Jane?
I think it's important for people to feel comfortable and confident to raise things, to open that dialogue, and to keep an open mind.
Okay. And Tarik?
I'm going to say trust in our leadership. I think knowing that we can do what we say we're going to do, and we're going to deliver, and rather than sort of being sort of babied or something. So yeah, just trusting that we're going to do what we're going to do.
Absolutely. And I mean, we certainly know that when Unlimited started as part of London 2012, but when it became an independent project, there was a real sense of, oh my God, are there enough high quality disabled artists out there for us to be able to fund high quality work? Oh my God, yes, is the simple answer. There are far, far, far more than we can ever fund. So, if anybody thinks there aren't talented disabled artists out there, then you're certainly not looking in the right places. Okay, so that's it. We're out of time. So I want to say thank you to all of you wonderful people, Jonny and Jane and Tarik. I also want to thank Lara and Chris, who've been curating the programme, Arts Council England for funding the panel, and of course the BBC Academy. It's part of their Digital Cities programme, so do find out more about that and join in with other events. And do check out the Digital Cities website for more information about masterclasses that are happening across various weeks. And Hello Culture will be back at Digital Cities in the new year on Wednesday, the 27th of January. So do keep an eye out in the booking links for more sessions. And if you want to see Brownton Abbey and the work of many other disabled artists, then please check out South Bank Centre's Unlimited Festival, which is built around many of the commissions we make. It'll be online this time, as many festivals are, from the 13th to the 17th of January. The full programme is being announced soon on the 3rd of December, which is International Day of Disabled People. You can also sign up to Unlimited's newsletter from any page on our website, and that will keep you in the loop about these artists and many, many, many more. But that's it for today. Thanks ever so much for being part of the session with us. And yeah, keep safe. Whatever the government say, keep safe. Bye.